Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brother War Smith-Bey from the Black News Network, the real voice of Black U.S.A, broadcasting live at you this Sunday afternoon at 3:30 p.m., bringing you the latest in what we feel is the new Jim Crow. Now, as you know, sometimes there's a change in what America likes us to know and how they like us to deal with it. But in this particular case, we are beginning to see the exact same things that we saw in our past. We're beginning to see it today. Our government is turning a blind eye to what's happening in our society. And so our objective today is to bring you information on what Jim Crow looks like in 2025, because it's not very much different than it used to be. First of all, let me give you the logistics, some logistics. I would very much like you to go to our YouTube page and subscribe to our channel, BNN247, and definitely go to our Facebook page and say hi to all of our people on the network. So I really do appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much for being a member of BNN 247. So without further ado, let's get kicking. I want to first of all introduce you to our co-host, Mr. Claude Foster, who is one of our own interesting individuals who has an interesting perspective of what we are going to talk about today. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Claude, go right ahead.
Thank you, my brother. I love the topic for today.
Oh, you do?
I love the topic. Critical race theory, affirmative action, and the Civil Rights Act, and how it's designed for denial of privilege. And you know, this country has never done anything specifically for Black people. There's something about black skin that just doesn't win it in this country. And you only got to look back at the signing of the 14th Amendment when that legislation was written. And I'll read to you exactly what it says. It says, Republicans did not want to be politically vulnerable to the charge of legislating only for the benefit of Black people. Thus, the 14th Amendment and the laws that enforced it made no reference to color, meaning no reference to black skin. And that's been true for every piece of legislation that's been signed in this country. If you look at all the civil rights laws that was passed, and then you look at the modern day civil rights laws starting in 1963 with the Kennedy administration and signed by the Johnson administration, finally pushed through Congress. It was no reference to Black people, the color. It dealt with sex. Everybody else got benefits, but the intended beneficiary, Black people, got nothing. We got nothing then, and we get nothing today.
Wow. That's some really interesting facts that you've researched. So, in your particular perspective, Mr. Clark, we really haven't done very much to change our position in America. So in order for us to get something changed, we're going to have to make a difference in the world today. Right. And I don't know how Black people can do that. I've thought about it for years, and I've wanted to talk about it for years on some of the things that we may be able to do to start this, to get rid of this damn Jim Crow process that we've been victimized by for I'd say over 100 years. We've been neglected, and you can kind of see the systematic approach to what America is doing to, I ain't gonna say America, I'm gonna say the American government. What you can see the systematic approach to what the American government is doing to alienate people. But the bottom line is, the more they try to focus on taking us outside of the mainstream network, the more they hurt themselves. So everything they do to us, they do to themselves double down, twice or three times as effective. I've noticed that we rank number 7 when it comes to affirmative action. There are so many people ahead of affirmative action. Was basically an outpour or a segment of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, and it was initially designed to assist us in making the difference in us becoming parallel to what has existed in America 400 years before we even set foot into the mainstream job market. But we have not been able to balance the scale. I don't give a damn what they come up with. We still have lagged far behind America when it comes to us gaining a foothold in equality or equal or better. So what I'm seeing, Mr. Claude, is that no matter what process they put in place for us to change this system, it don't make a damn difference, because no matter how they do it, they twist that shit around for their benefit. And that's where we seem to suffer.
Well, the Urban League put out a report in 2000. The last report was in 2024, right?
Mm.
And they said at the current pace, it would take anywhere from 1 to 3 centuries for most Black Americans to achieve parity with their white peers.
So you mean 100 to 300 years?
More for us to achieve parity.
And that's just parity, and not to surpass. That's parity. That's to make it even it out. So they can always throw money at every situation. That's what America does: throw money at problems and expect the problem to go away. But that's not how it normally gets resolved. We don't own the infrastructure.
Let me ask you a question. Does a Black person act differently around communicating with white people than he does communicating with Black people?
Hell to the yeah.
In what way do Black people act differently communicating with white versus communicating with Black?
All right, there's a thing called code switching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a really bad tendency to code switch. Like, you and I can get together and we would say, "What's up, brother? What's happening? Give me some dap." We'll bump it up and do all that stuff.
Why don't we do that with whites? Are we saying that whites have a superior communication style?
No. What I'm saying, when I do it, is because whites have this British wannabe belief that you have to speak upper middle class English in order to be an American. And that's not the case. We know it's not the case. Our objective in America as Black people is to be ourselves among ourselves. But when we're operating in their world, because we want to make their money, we're going to put ourselves in a position to kind of be like them.
But what does that say about our mentality in terms of just our Blackness, in terms of the Black educated versus the Black uneducated, like your friend always talks about, that group of people?
Like Chuck.
Right.
That's a great question. That to me, that says a lot about our people. It says that we have this self-awareness that we know the difference. The thing is, they don't know the difference. They don't know our code switching. They don't know how we are in our neighborhoods. And they assume that they know everything. and everything that we do successful is a threat. And that is where the problem lies. If we can put 5 of us at one time, 5 of us in one place was a threat, because they are so afraid of us surpassing them that they go all out to ensure that we don't. And in order for us to keep them at bay, or to keep them not aware of how we function, we code switch. So code switching ain't such a bad thing, in my opinion, because it's for the betterment of a Black man or a Black woman who goes into their arena and must use particular tactics in order to survive in that arena. So it's the same thing. If you go into a professional boxing match, you can't go in a professional boxing match with a street fighting mentality, or that other famous way they fight now mentality. You have to go in there with a professional boxing arena mentality. So it's the same thing when you go into the white man's environment, because that's what you're actually doing. You're going into the white man's environment. When you're working in that neighborhood, you have to go in there with that mentality. And that shows us way above where they are, because we got the situation awareness enough to know that when we go into this arena, that we have to function at a certain level, and we have to function at the level that is not a threat to them. Because the moment we become an aware threat, that keyword aware threat to them, then our job is at risk. Our money is at risk. Our livelihood and our family's livelihood is at risk. So
but how have
be slick enough to get past that?
But how have they, meaning white America, used education to separate us from ourselves?
To me, education is, this is all my opinion, and I'll gladly give it. Our education system is designed to wean you off your history. Just like a 6-week-old puppy coming away from his mother, they'll come back and have puppies by his mother if you don't be careful with breeding dogs or something like of that nature. But we are our education system is to erase the history of us. They provide tiny bits of history that they deem acceptable. For instance, they thought Martin Luther King was acceptable. They feel that the NAACP is acceptable. They feel that what's the lady name on the bus? Rosa Parks is acceptable. But when you get to Malcolm X, when you get to Marcus Garvey, when you start Huey P. Newton, you get to naming those names are not acceptable in American history. Those names are not, when you get to talking about the way they treated female slaves during slavery, that's not acceptable for the younger generations to know right now. They don't want them to know.
Let me ask you a question, my brother. So do you think that the Black middle class and the Black upper class, in a way, kind of are denouncing their Blackness by separating themselves based on their education or their economics?
Man, you must have took some time. You got some great questions today.
I mean, because not only is it the education and the economics, it's the closeness to white. Because as they acquire, they don't acquire those assets. The Black community is not better because of it. Just talk to Chuck.
There's a way to look at this.
I mean, the Black community is the more educated we become, is the Black community better off if it's going to take us 3 centuries?
I can answer. Let me give you an answer.
Okay.
If you take 100 Black people, right, who obtained the degree, let's say obtained a master's degree, 100 black men or black women, men and women, to obtain a master's degree in any field across the spectrum. Out of that 100 people, 75 of those people remain connected to their community. And it is just an opinion. I think 75 of those people remain connected to their community. The other 25 look at it as that's an opportunity for them to get away from what they don't want to be viewed as. In other words, they don't want to be viewed as black. They don't want to be viewed as an African American or a Moor. They don't want to be classified in that neck of the woods. They don't even want to be known. Let's say most of us are from the east side because that's where the sun rises. So they put the blacks over there so they can get up before anybody else in the morning. So they don't want to be affiliated with the east side, or they don't want to be affiliated with slavery, or they don't want to be affiliated with Black History Month because they think that white people view these things as stereotypically black. So they don't want to be stereotypically black.
And thereby inferior, substandard, not equal to, not the same quality, not as good. I mean, you can go on and on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. In order for me, I'm just gonna put myself in that 25%. In order for me to bring my family to another level, I'm gonna I'm gonna move away from the black neighborhood. If the black people start moving into my community, I'm gonna move out just like the white people do, and go to a place where black people don't have access to.
Where not as many have access to.
Not as what?
Not as many.
Not as many have access to.
And I think that number is right around, it used to be 8%. It may have tweaked up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But they say white flight occurs when the community changes by about 8% or more blacks. I think the number
is black in your community white flight gets started.
White flight. Right. They start running.
That's heavyweight there, man.
And go ahead. I'm sorry, bro.
That's just the way it is, though. I mean, they move, and black people move too. When they think they got too many black folks in their neighborhood, they gonna move because they don't want to be stereotypically labeled as black. And don't let a George Floyd situation occur. I mean, if it's, we are out there believing in what we're trying to get based on the George Floyd. But there are black people that say, well, what's the big deal? Black lives matter. Well, blue lives matter too, or white lives matter too. They're trying to put it all in the same pot. But when it don't go in the same pot.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. It ain't like black lives don't matter. It's like black educated lives matter more than black uneducated lives. George Floyd was a black uneducated man that could be dismissed, not so much because of his blackness, but because of who he was. How the system destroys uneducated black people.
When they don't think we have a foothold in America. But look at the uneducated power.
I mean, look at Rosa Parks.
Look at the power. Yeah. Look at the power of what happened based on George Floyd. Millions of black people came together, how brief it may have been, based on George Floyd being murdered by that police officer.
But you know what I think, brother? But you know what I think, brother? I don't think that I think that COVID was around, and I think white kids with guilty conscience was feeling a lot of guilt. They had a lot of time on their hand. They had nothing else to do. They weren't in school.
A lot of guilt about slavery.
I think that they are more aware. I'm talking about the liberals that were out there protesting in March. There weren't no conservatives out there protesting in March. These were white liberals. These were the white liberals that Malcolm X said there ain't nothing you could do for us.
Right.
So
they sure were.
I mean, so that's who was out there marching.
But they were feeling somewhat guilty because of that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
that's understandable. But Jim Crow today is just as prevalent as it was back in the 60s. And I don't see very much different. You don't see the whites only. You don't see you can't drink in this water fountain, you can't come through the front door on restaurants anymore, or you can't sit at the counter in Walgreens anymore. But I just saw a skit the other day, and I think it was just as real as it can get. A black man went into one of these local clinics to get some allergy medicine. And the doctor, not the counter now, not the little $10 an hour clerk, but the doctor refused to give this black man medical attention because he was black. That was the only reason he couldn't receive medical attention. So with the removal of affirmative action, with the removal of DEI, with the removal, with the implementation of critical race theory, we have came to a point in America where white people know that we are gaining so fast on them that they can't stop the momentum. So now they're trying to take away, the little things that gave us some momentum. So that little things you took away, like DEI, affirmative action, all those things being taken away ain't hurting us. It's hurting us, but it's hurting us at a very low percentage compared to how it's hurting you. Because like I said, we rank number 7 when it comes to affirmative action. You got white women who are the number 1 recipients of affirmative action. They're the number 1 beneficiaries of affirmative action. Then you got white men who are the 2nd. Then you got Chinese who are the 3rd. You got Oriental. You got all the Orientals who are falling in those categories way above us. We as black people, are at the bottom of the beneficiary list for equal opportunity, or all these implementations that were done based on the Civil Rights Act. None of this stuff has really benefited us. Like, for instance, let's look at the Civil Rights Act of 1965. That was a momentum by Martin Luther King, who wanted rights for black people, right? Voting rights, everything else for black people. But what eventually happened? White women jumped on the bandwagon.
Let me correct you.
Let me say one more thing first, Claude. White women jumped on the bandwagon. And then not only that, it moved on to the new movement. The gay people jumped on the bandwagon for the 2nd major movement of black people. They took over the 2nd major movement. That was after Michael Brown and George Floyd issues. Black people started another momentum to get civil rights to benefit us. But what happened? Gay rights took over the entire process and left us in the dirt again, just like it did back in 1965. So no matter how many, we allow it. That's what's so damn sorry about it. Because once we take over, we start this momentum and we get it moving, we just sit back and get out the damn way and let somebody else have it like it's their movement when we started the shit, but we give up on it and we sit back and watch somebody else take it and run with it. Look at how many gay rights came out as a result of us fighting for rights based on Michael Brown and George Floyd. It's a lot.
But go back to what I said earlier.
What?
That this country has not passed any legislation specifically for black people.
Oh, fact.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. That wasn't just for black people.
No,
But
that
now,
includes
who
everything.
did you see? Who did you see out there fighting for civil rights? Who was dying in Mississippi? Who was dying in Alabama? Who was dying in all these small towns? What did they look like? They look like us. We have always been the catalyst for change for everybody else, and but yet we've had to compete with the very people that we've been a catalyst for change for. We've had to compete.
Look how many. See, we keep talking about Jim Crow, but look how many black people died at the hands of the police before 10 Chinese people or Oriental people died at the hands of black people. And when those 10 Oriental people died, Congress lost their damn mind. Within 30 days, they implemented a law to put people in jail for attacking Chinese or Orientals. They were getting towed the hell up on the side. They were getting beat down. But nobody cared about the shit of when police brutalized over 400 black people since the year 2000. 400 black men, women, and children too now. Not just black men and women, children.
But this is not just...
Look at this guy. And the worst thing that happens to me, Claude, the first thing the police department gonna say, oh, we fired him. What is he gonna do just by getting fired? Just what they've been doing for the last 100 years. Go to the next damn county and get hired over there. And they're still doing the same shit that they were doing over here. So just like this guy that shot that young lady in the face for a pot of boiling water, he got fired. But you ain't heard nothing else, have you? Or have you?
Well, I mean, there are instances where you can point to justice, like those black guys for the white cops in Mississippi right outside of Jackson came in and threatened them and put a gun in. I mean, they were prosecuted. I mean, they was arrested. So things are a little bit different now. But I'm just saying that from a value, because back in the day, nothing would have been done. But I'm just saying that we passed these laws, and these laws are really not designed. Nothing. If you come to a country and that country has basically dehumanized you, how can you ever be equal? This country, just like in France and just like in other countries where black folks were, they made us unhuman. And so, and they did that intellectually, scientifically, through all the means at their disposal. They say that you're not equal. And this is the reason. You're that missing link between the monkey and humanity. So that's why I think that we don't have the value. That's why I think that you mentioned the Chinese, how they can pass a law. Because nobody else has been dehumanized like the black man in the world. Not just in America, in the world. I don't care whether you're in England, France, the United States, wherever you are. The black man has been dehumanized and subjected to all kind of study to prove that we're not equal. And no law will ever be able to be passed to unroot that kind of racism.
It's in the genes,
It's in the DNA of this.
What would it? I mean, the next 30 minutes, let's try to figure out some things that would make a difference.
Well, you said in what we're talking about, you said that join us to discuss how white power, critical race theory, affirmative action, and Civil Rights Act are designed for denial of privileges. So, if all those laws are designed for the denial of privileges, why do we? If the 13th, 14th Amendment are in the Constitution, they're part of the Constitution. Why do we need laws?
That's right.
What's the purpose of the law?
Even though
we're not constitutionally a citizen, what does citizenship mean? If I'm a citizen of the United States,
we have
what does that
citizenship as
mean?
a privilege.
But what does that mean for me as a black
There
person?
are five levels of citizenship, Claude, and we're level 1. We're level 1. Level 1 means you're just another Negro. Everybody.
So as we get education and whatever, move up, we're like level 1A, 1B, 1C. We never get to 10. We never get to full
5 levels of citizenship. And you remember, Donald Trump was talking about birthright citizenship.
How do you feel about that?
If it's part of the Constitution, how can he change it unless it's a privilege?
No, what he's saying is that it only applies that the 14th Amendment only applies to black folks.
Technically, it does, because white folks ain't gonna deal with that.
No, so you're saying that
it was done for black folks, and that's why I keep trying to tell people that the 14th Amendment is null and void. It's a privilege. It's not a right. A right is a citizenship. That's why I said birthright citizenship. If you're going to have birthright citizenship, then you can't touch it. But if it's birth privilege citizenship, which grants that, if you read the 14th Amendment, it says, does it say privilege or right?
Okay,
it says privilege, right? Either way, we don't have the 14th
Amendment says all persons born or naturalized, because they were talking about the Chinese at the time that was here working on the railroads, are naturalized in the United States, are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So what Trump is trying to say, that just because you come across the border, drop a baby here, doesn't mean that you have any kind of standing and that you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, because you have it doesn't say birthright citizenship, it says subject to the jurisdiction. So what does it mean to be subject to the jurisdiction?
Born in U.S. territory.
So they're not talking about the
jurisdiction if you're born in the U.S. of A. territory.
Why wouldn't it says born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof? Why would they put the and? If you seem like you were born here, you would be. All the rest would be true. You would be subject to the jurisdiction if you're born here. Why do they need to say that?
And they say, and what?
And they say not only all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to his, when would the and subject apply?
So if you're born and naturalized,
why do you need to be
that should not be an and? Because you're already subject to it without being and subject to it. You can be born and naturalized and not subject to it.
So when would you be born and naturalized?
I don't understand how that could be either. It's difficult to understand that.
Yeah.
It's always written, so it's not clear.
All persons born or naturalized in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're naturalized, you will be subject to his jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
If you're born, you will be subject to his jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we need and subject to the jurisdiction?
I'm thinking,
name a situation where you would be born or naturalized and not be subject to the jurisdiction.
I'm thinking you left yourself as a federal government. You needed a loophole. Every single law has a loophole. Every single law. The deal is you have to find it. That's the problem. So Trump has found it.
No,
that loophole.
Now, what it may apply to and subject to the jurisdiction thereof may be to the state or wherever you reside. So it might not be national, maybe and subject to the jurisdiction thereof of the state that was in whatever state you reside in. That's the only thing
you can be a citizen by diplomacy.
Well,
you can be a citizen by refugee.
Because
So,
see, it goes on to say, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizenship of the United States, nor shall any state deprive. Because see, you're not a citizen. You're a citizen of the United States, but you're a citizen of the state in which you're born. So,
but
like
no
you were
state,
born in Mississippi, and I was born
no
in
state.
Alabama.
In other words, you automatically a citizen of the United States if you're born in any territory of the USA.
Right.
Even Puerto Rico being a territory, Guam being a territory.
But if you wind up in Mississippi, you're subject to that jurisdiction.
Yeah, but you cannot be subject. You cannot not be a federal entity by being born in a state. But see, this is where people don't want to. Oh, let me explain it. This part right here. People don't want to understand how this works. If you can take what's happening here in America, this is a capitalist society. There's no doubt that it revolves around money. There's no doubt that the structure is ambiguous. We don't know I know what the structure is, and I think you know, and many other folks know too. The structure of the United States is a corporation. If you can explain to me why DC is not a state and it's only a territory, it's only what is it? DC.
It's a federal district. It's not a state.
District. It's a district, and it's a district for one reason. It's a district because it is a corporation. Corporation with 50 entities, 50 DBAs. Every state is a DBA. So anything a state creates belongs to the corporation. It's a DBA. If I'm a DBA, right, and I create a business, 100 businesses over here, anything that they create owes it to me as the corporate or as the prime contractor, basically. They're subcontractors of the prime. I'm saying it in a different term. So every state got to pay to the federal government, which is the main company. Just like it's no different. It's just different terminology. And if we don't start to recognize that the USA is a corporation, that each state is doing business as, and that each person born into those states is a commodity. Do you hear me? A commodity. I'm a commodity, you're a commodity. Well, I'm not a commodity anymore because I did something to change the status. And that's what Black people have to do. Because until you change your status, you are still a number one citizen out of the 5 categories. You go from number 1 to a number 3 when you authenticate your birth certificate. Your birth certificate is mandatory within 15 days. However, and why is it mandatory? It's mandatory because you belong to somebody until you tell them you stand alone. You're an entity. You are not a straw man or a thing of the past. You are not a thing of the past, but what do they call it? An intangible object. You are human. So you are not human right now, because you haven't authenticated your birth certificate. Until you authenticate, you are not human. That's what it boils down to. You are a thing. You are a commodity until you authenticate yourself. And the only way you authenticate yourself is by taking your rights back from the state. And to take your rights back from the state, you have to authenticate. And that is the only way you can do that. There's no other way it can be done in America. And I tell people this all the time. You have to authenticate your birth certificate, because your birth certificate gives the state the right to dictate to you what you will do. That means as long as you are not authenticated, you must have your driver's license. You must pay your taxes. You must honor the law according to the state that don't govern everybody. It only governs you because you haven't taken the time to make yourself human. You're still a commodity. And as a commodity, you have no rights. That's why Black people can get shot down in the street right now because they're the main ones with no rights.
So
No,
are white
they're-
people
they're
are
commodity.
white people a commodity? Or
They are too, but they're not abused and misused as black people. We're already at the bottom. So by not authenticating our birth certificates, it leaves us still in that bad category where they can do what they want with us because we ain't did nothing to change it. It's up to us as individuals. Everybody, I mean, the history of black people, the history of movements of different organizations tell us that we have to change our status in this country. Right now, I keep saying it, you don't have a nationality. You think you are a black American. There's no such thing on the international record book, the international court as a black American. There's no such thing. You have no history. You have a history, but you have no authenticity. You have to authenticate yourself. And by authenticating yourself, only thing you're doing is removing yourself from being a commodity to a person. You are a living being, but you're not looked at as a living being. That's what the problem is. Black people are not living beings according to Black's Law Dictionary and the way of America. You're not living. You're a commodity. I'm living because I've authenticated myself.
Are you subject to the jurisdiction in which the state you reside, or even the city you reside?
I'm not. No. Once you become a human being, a living entity, you can't be taken to court. You can be taken to court, but when you go to court, you can let the judge know that he has no jurisdiction over you. Now they make it look like you looking like a clown up in there saying that you don't own me, you can't do this. It's a certain way you have to say it, and I don't know that way y'all.
But does this only apply to black people?
It applies to everybody that don't authenticate themselves, but we're the ones who suffer it more than anybody else. So so I can be concerned with whites, Chinese, and everybody else getting authenticated, but that ain't where the problem is. The problem is we're the ones suffering. We're the ones being held back. We're the ones don't own anything. Chinese own shit all over the country. I mean, I'm 5 years old and every store in my hometown is owned by Chinese. How the hell that happened? And I'm living in a black town.
Because there was nothing
unbelievable. Huh?
Because there was nothing that restricted trade with Chinese.
This was in the 50s and 60s.
I said there was nothing that restricted. They weren't black.
But they all over this country like that. You go to a small, and even in 2025, you go down to a Shell gas station, you see people of color, but they're not black. You go to anything, any major any major food, any major chain that makes money off black people is not owned by black people. Hair and beauty salon shops where they go get all this hair, where they go get all this beauty stuff. You ever see? It's only one that I know of. It's in Chicago that's owned by black people.
Yeah, I think
otherwise, the rest of the country is owned by Indians and other folks.
I think they went. Did they go out of business? The one in Chicago.
I don't know. They may have because we don't even support our own folks.
Because I know we know
it's black. The first thing we thinking when we go in there is that the price too damn high. But we don't argue with the Chinese man when we go in his store. We go pay his damn prices, but we don't want to pay our prices. Our prices are high. Hell yeah, they high. Because we paying high overhead to get this stuff into our stores anyway. Because we don't have the networks in place like they do to get the supplies that we need to sell them at a cheaper price. We don't have those networks. We have to charge high prices because there's nowhere else you're going to get it like that. And then you see black folks with barbecue joints, right? You go in there and you're paying a hell of a lot of money to get some barbecue, but you go to the white folks and you don't think twice about it. But see, they don't have to have those high prices like we do because we're paying twice as much to operate our black barbecue business as Rudy's Barbecue pays to operate theirs.
Mm-hmm.
We're paying way more. And ours are so small, it's probably only going to be one. And then before you know it, they're going to buy us out and we're going to lose out on that too. One person going to get away rich, but the rest of the black people that could have gotten ahead in that business are not going to get ahead in that business. That's our problem. But this authentication stuff, I'm telling you, is where we would change the trajectory of the game. And if we don't change this game that's playing,
how do we do
we're
that?
going to continue to be the ones who are at the bottom of on top of the toilet paper.
Well, how do we do that when
the toilet and on top of the toilet paper?
How do we do that? How do we do that when the majority, a good portion of us, would rather be as close to whiteness as we can?
As we can get.
That seems to be the direction of the arrow, not toward us.
And you knocking it out the park today.
I'm saying,
we want to be close to white folks. That's what you're saying. We want to live in their neyborhoods.
Because
we want to drink their milk. We want to get their ice, because their ice is colder than ours.
No, as we ascend educationally, financially, you want to be around other people academically and financially. A doctor don't want to be around a garbage worker. A doctor want to be around other doctors. Right. So so is it natural for educated blacks to want to be around educated people? What I'm saying is,
it's natural for them. Take it back to the village. Take it back all the way to the village, Claude. The king sits on the throne in a black African village, right? But his people are right there. They're not so far away from the king.
But they look like him.
They can't say nothing to the king.
We don't look like the king in America. They look like the king.
We want the king to not see this pigmentation or this melanin in our skin.
So if we can cover it up with education or cover it up with more money, that kind of gets us closer to.
And how many times have you been on a phone interview and then when they see you, they know that they find out you black and they tell you they don't want you anymore? We've already filled the position. I know people that's experienced that. They sound so white on the phone and they speak so proper on the phone because they're code switching. But it ain't about code switching. It ain't about talking like you black.
Is that the only option?
About status. It's about your citizen status. And you are not a citizen until you authenticate. You're not better than an immigrant citizen until you authenticate. And the only way you're going to authenticate is to rescind your birth certificate. And just look at it this way. Your birth certificate gives the state that you were born in the right to take your children. It gives you the right, it gives the state the right to mandate an education for your children. You can't educate your children the way you want to. You got to educate your children the way the state tells you to, because that child technically does not belong to you, because you signed that child over when you signed that birth certificate. Because they call the person on that birth certificate not the parent, they call that person the informer. You informed on that child. That's what you did. In other words, an informant is what? A snitch. You snitched on that child to give the state authority over that child, and mess around and do something that the state don't approve of. They'll take that child. And right. Then you worry about yourself. Let's take it on up a notch. That's the child. As an adult, because you have not authenticated yourself, you are subject to the law abiding of traffic stops, and the cop can do what they want with you on a traffic stop as a black person, and they can do more to you as a black person than they can do with a white. A white person can get away with talking trash and reaching for his wallet. But let a black person do that, he end up dead. And then the cop will be in the right because he felt threatened. But he's the one there with the gun and the taser and everything else that could beat you down. But he's the one threatened. You ain't got nothing. And then they don't find a gun in the car and he still walks because he felt threatened. It's been like that for hundreds of years. And the only thing gonna change that is our status. And Donald Trump is doubling down on our status. And if we don't do it for ourselves, he's gonna do it for us. He's gonna make our citizenship, right now, like I said, it's a privilege. He's gonna make it less than a privilege. He's gonna make it so if you don't do something else, you are not gonna be a citizen at all. You're gonna have to authenticate yourself. That's the only way. And you do it on a local level and you do it on a federal level. And both of those authentications,
what does that get you?
It gets you to another level of citizenship. Right now, you're at the bottom level of citizenship in America. And when you're on the bottom level of citizenship, every single law that's written is your jurisdiction. You can't violate any single law on the books. But as a authenticated citizen, you are no longer on that bottom tier. You're on number 3 tier. That's once you become federal authenticated, because when the police pull your name up in the computer, the codes are 1 through 5. That's how they know whether they should be messing with you or not, or whether they can mess with you.
What code are you talking about?
You're number 1. You are a 1 in that system. Every system in a police car, in the 18,000 police forces in America, and see, they talk about they got no systems that can track the murders that the police do, but they got a system that can track every single individual with a driver's license.
So what's a 5?
A 5 is like you got diplomatic immunity to an extent where you are Donald Trump. That's a 5. You ain't going to jail because you're politically too important to be put behind bars with the regular people.
So where are most whites?
Most whites are still, they're on a 1 as well. They're on 1, but they don't have the challenges that we do. That's the difference. We ain't white folks. We don't fit on that level. We can talk white, act white, live white, spend money white, drive white cars. It don't matter. We are not on that level because not in the eye of the jurisdicting society. We're as Black Americans, we are no more than considered as slaves that are off the plantation. Because right now, why is it that you go back to the penitentiary and then end up working, building car tags and building furniture and doing all this other stuff for free? Is because of which amendment? What amendment is that? The 13th Amendment or the 14th Amendment?
But the 13th freed slaves. The
13th. Because of the 13th Amendment. You're no longer, you can get, if let's say if I wanted you back in jail because I thought you were acting too white, then I can come pick you up for any reason I want to. I could get a racist judge to sign off on a warrant just because I don't like you, or just because you sassed off at me, or because you looked at my wife. I'm white now, and I didn't like it, so I'm coming to get you, and I'm gonna put you back where you belong, put you back in your place, because you acting uppity now. You can look me in my eye. I'm taking your ass back to the farm. So I'm putting you back in jail, and then when I put you in jail, I'm farming you out to Mr. Billy, my buddy over here, who owns the textile plant, and I'm gonna have you out there chopping cotton, picking cotton, processing cotton, working in the mill, doing what I want you to do until I get tired of you, until you cut your fingers off in that press, and then I'm sending you right back to prison with one hand less, and it ain't cost me nothing but a few dollars for renting you out of you're a commodity. You're being rented. That's what I'm saying. You can still be rented just like a slave. as long as you're not.
So within that construct of affirmative action, civil rights, and so you don't see any Black people ranked 7th on the list of benefits. 7th from what? Who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
Number one.
Right.
Number one is number one. You saying who's? Say that again now. Who's?
You said
who's are the 7th rated people?
Critical race theory, affirmative action, and civil rights acts are designed for denial of privileges. Black people ranked 7th on the list of benefits.
Number one, the very benefiting people on our list of 1 through 7 for let's say affirmative action. The number one recipient of benefits for affirmative action is not us, which it was designed for us. It was written for us, but white women are the ones who won, who came out as number one on that list.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to look at what's actually happening here. White women are the number one recipients. The number two recipients, white men. Same with welfare. Why was welfare pushed through Congress so easily? Because they thought they were going to do something for Black people, Black women specifically. But in actuality, white women ended up benefiting more from welfare than Black women. Section 8. Why would Section 8 be something for more than Black people? But no, Black people are not the number one beneficiaries from that.
Right.
So who are the number one beneficiaries from that? Not Black people. White women, Mexican women are the number one beneficiaries for that.
Well, like I said from the beginning,
Section 8, same thing, all that. Huh?
No law has been written or implemented solely for Black people.
No, it hasn't.
In fact,
and this is 2025.
Used to justify the expansion of what Black people have been used to justify the expansion of rights, but we haven't been the beneficiary of those rights.
Right. None of them. Not
so
single.
How do we change that? What's your thoughts on how do we change it?
The only way we're going to change it is to start to separate ourselves from the victim. And we cannot separate ourselves from the victim by being part of this society as is. The first step is to authenticate. That is the only way we can begin our process, is by authenticating ourselves and taking us off the commodity list and making ourselves a human being. Because as long as we're commodities, we can be treated like commodities. We don't have we really have, they say we got rights, but you and I both know those rights don't apply. And 90% of the Black people know that these rights don't apply to us. But they claim it all the time that we giving you this. Look at what Donald Trump just did to this Black woman, this Black governor, who said that they're going to abide by the law.
There's only 2 Black governors. You got Maryland governor.
That's a woman, right?
No, you got Maryland, and you got.
But who's this woman he was talking about? Was it a mayor?
I think she was.
It might have been a mayor, but
no, she was the governor. But I think she was talking about LGBT rights.
Yeah, because they wanted trans men, to be able to participate in women's sports.
There's 2 Black governors now. The governor in Maryland. There's only been what, 3 Black governors, 3 or 4 in the history of the country, and 3 of them have been in this Three of them have been in the South, Virginia, and what's the other state where we had a black governor? Virginia, Boston, Maryland, New York had a black governor who replaced Spitzer. Remember Patterson? Governor Patterson.
Yeah.
Replaced Governor Spitzer when he got caught up in that sex scandal. So that's been the only black governors in this country. Yeah, she was defending those LGBTQ rights. And what did Trump tell her?
He told her that
you ain't getting a dime.
You ain't getting a dime from the federal government if you don't follow these laws.
Can he do that?
Follow through.
Can he
but
stop?
He was just flexing on her. It was unbefitting of a president speaking to a woman in public forum. And that's what he did. He was wrong.
And constitutionally, can he deny that state Medicare benefits? Can he deny them education benefits?
Not constitutionally,
can he deny them transportation?
But he can. He'll do it, and then he'll have to go back and read.
And the court will tell him he got to go.
Just like he fired all those people, and he then went back and hired many of them, the ones that wanted to come back.
Yeah, because speaking of that, in this Urban League report, they said that the current space. Okay, he said, this was in 2024, while major institutions, including top corporations, governments, and media have increased the number of black leaders in their spaces, search efforts are being limited as diversity and inclusion initiative face court challenges, public backlash from conservative activists, and restrictions by some state and local Republican lawmakers. Hell, he did away with it. So what does that say about our progress?
We have no progress. We haven't passed from 1950. We're right in the same category. The only thing not happening right now is we're not being abused in the street. But that doctor situation, denying medical coverage of medical assistance, is another level of where we are now in America, which is it's probably not only that one situation, it's many situations that we just don't know about. Just like it was back then, many black folks being killed that we just don't know about.
Well, he project, the Urban League, to their credit, it's in 2024, they said that Black Americans' significant economic and civil rights progress was threatened. Came true. Here we are. What did we do about it?
Everything. There's not a single law left on the books right now. Ain't nothing else he got to rescind. It's all done. He did what he said he was going to do. That's what the people are saying.
So knowing that in 2024, why did only 42.3% of black folks voted in 2022?
And you said this all along, that it's bigger than voting. I think that's what you kept saying.
I just think that we have settled on Black Americans have settled on the fact that white is the go-to standard. And so our whole economic system is based on that go-to standard. Like when I get my education and I start making my money, I want to get as near and as close to whiteness as I can get.
Why would we not want to do that? I mean, if we want to live here, we have to meet the standard of this society. And becoming as near to that standard as possible is the only way we're going to do that. I mean, we all want to create our own society. We all have thought that Oklahoma was our state that we were going to go to. We all have thought about Mississippi being our state, but it's not going to happen that way. And I know it. It's just wishful thinking to think that they're going to allow us to create a state of our own, even a neighborhood of our own, even a community of our own. It ain't going to happen.
So what is Black History Month really?
It's an appeasement of a culture. Same with Juneteenth, an appeasement of a culture. It's not, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do a single thing to change the way is represented in this community. We are represented in this country. It doesn't change it. Doesn't change a single thing.
I mean, what
I would even say,
what does calling ourselves African American or Black, or what does that change? Along the same question about the Black History Month.
Okay, that's a good. Joseph Plecker in like 1942 came up with the races, that nobody else could be any other race other than color. And colored until Mexican, Black, everything other than white.
Derived.
There's only two races, white and color. And because he compiled all those people together, there was a purpose behind that. And that was to take away a nationality. And to take away your nationality meant to erase what's behind you and what allowed you to become prominent in this country. If he had left you the way you were, you would not have been, you would have been able to grow to another level in this country. But in order to keep you from growing, you had to be categorized in a position where you could not grow. And that was to take away your nationality. Because the land that we're on right now is considered Northwest Africa, but nobody wants to know that. Abraham Lincoln said in his memoirs that there were 10 million people of color on the west side of the Appalachian Mountains. Who were those people, you guess? So you and I know that those 10 million people of color had to be Black. And if you read the book Indian Giver by Wentworth, I think, Jack Wentworth, you'll find that that they talk about how white people came in from Venezuela all the way up the peninsula to the Louisiana Purchase to acquire this continent. That's what you find out, how they conquered the people that were already here and made them to be who the people that they project us to be today. And that's slave. Those people in 1470, the Spanish, which are considered white folks, the Spanish came over here and they conquered the Moors in the north, this territory. And see, we look at Venezuela as Central America, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not Central America. This is Central America according to the maps that they wrote before whatever that man named in 1492.
But how does that relate to us being brought here as slaves?
There were several boatloads of slaves brought here. The first ones, like I said, in 1619. However, there were millions of us here already that were conquered by the white people who came and made us slaves. So everybody ain't descendants from East Africa. Many of us are descendants from Northwest Africa, which is, we were already here. So why would they allow you to know?
Where's the record of that?
That's the thing. Why would they allow you to know that your ancestors were already here? Why would they let you know?
How do we know it then?
How do we know it? By looking at different ancestries, different histories. And picture this. Mesopotamia and Pangea, that's what I want to say. Pangea was one big continent, right?
Mm-hmm.
One big landmass. When Pangea separated from the USA, we calling it the USA now, over here, and over here is Pangea. It's separated. The Africans over here did not jump off of this side of America, of the land, back over here to this side. They didn't do it because it don't make sense. They moved with the land. And so the land now, Northwest Africa, and this is East Africa, became a continent by itself, all the way down to Venezuela, to the tip of Venezuela. That is South or Northwest Africa, or down there, Southwest
we know
Africa.
that there are dark
Northwest Africa.
in Mexico, Canada, all
It's
of the
Northwest and Southwest Africa. And these two continents separated. The people didn't all jump off of this landmass to stay over here with the continent of Africa. They moved with the land. And because they moved with the land, they were here hundreds, thousands of years later,
So
when the British came to America.
So what percentage of us are descendants of slaves?
There's no difference, because you can't really tell between African slaves that came over on ships, nor the slaves or the slaves that were made that were already here. There's no separation between the two.
So how do we know that?
They all suffered the same fate, basically. All the
so there were slaves that was already here that were captured and put into bondage.
Millions.
I mean, there's no doubt. There's so much about history that we just don't get in a normal educational environment. So there's no doubt. I just wonder. No law can
equalize what they've done to us.
Like the 64 Civil Rights Act, or the 60, started under Kennedy, but the 64 Civil Rights Act prevented discrimination based on sex. But not sexual, and it was expanded to sexual orientation. But it was based on sex initially, meaning you can't discriminate against someone that's a female.
Right.
But that term was expanded. And now we have LGBTQ rights. So, Black people, we've been the nucleus for change, but we haven't benefited from those changes. We've been the nucleus, we've been the justification for laws to change, but we haven't been the benefit of those laws. Otherwise, these great disparities wouldn't still exist. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so far behind. So it's like this government has used us to give more rights to everybody other than us.
To them. That's it.
Why don't we just do away with all the civil rights laws and stuff and just go
right?
The Constitution?
Yeah.
The Constitution said all men are created equal and endowed with certain. Why can't that just be the law of the land? And we enforce that.
It's too simple, and it's too much stuff swept under the rug. And we are not going to allow, I'm saying that America is not going to allow the truth to ever be told if they can help it. But that's why they fight so hard to keep us in a particular place, because we know, some of us know, and many of us are trying to make a difference in what's happening in our communities right now. And if we get too loud, look at how they've shut down every civil rights movement or every so-called thought of civil rights movements that they could ever potentially think of. Look at the Black Panthers, for instance. The Black Panthers were a very small organization. And look how how can you wipe out an organization in less than a year just like that and lock up everybody or kill everybody? And look at what they did to Bobby Seals, who they shot in his bed and killed his girlfriend, and the baby survived. She was pregnant. So with that, we all know that the objective is to not allow a Black organization to be successful that can bring out the truth. And the only one that won't bring out the truth that survived is the NAACP. and it's still surviving because you'll never hear the truth from the NAACP. Now, with that, I wanted to put that all in one place so I can give the closing comments to you to summarize what we've talked about and take us to next week's show where we can continue this discussion if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
So go ahead. I'm turning it over to you, my brother.
No, I mean, I find it interesting. Like I said, I think for me, historically, knowing that nothing, no law, no legislation, no amendment, no bill has ever been done specifically for us. Specifically to address that evil wrongs are called slavery.
Yeah.
But there has been no law to just fix us.
Right.
There has been no mental health program to fix us so that we can stop hating on one another, so that we can stop despising one another, so that we can stop wanting to be black skinned with a white mask walking around every day acting like that's normal. Right. And so there has been no legislation, no outlay of finances to fix us, the most aggrieved in this country.
Yeah.
How do you go from slavery to humanity and it not have psychological damage? But instead of being addressed, the medical profession has continued to malign and treat us as less than human beings to this day.
Yeah.
So I don't see America. I don't see America being any different today than it was prior to any of these laws being passed. That's because right. from the power of America, like I say, we are still being misused today by the medical profession. The Tuskegee experiments wasn't during slavery.
Right.
Infecting people with syphilis so you can see how long they live and the impact. That wasn't in slavery.
No.
That was in the 1950s, 60s. So, and the fact that we passed that all these laws that you mentioned here, the civil rights laws, the voting rights laws, they are not about us. They will never be about us until we stand up and make them about us. And I just don't see. I don't see that will. And maybe this show can help people to start thinking about what we really need to do and how we can really hold people accountable. And that's my comment.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much, my brother Claude Foster, my co-host for the Black News Network, BNN 247. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at BNN 247 and subscribe to us on YouTube at the same BNN 247. We're here every Sunday at 3:30 p.m. broadcasting live, and we're discussing issues and how they affect Black America. These are the things that we need to know. And today's discussion was about what Jim Crow looks like in 2025. And if you want to have a further discussion on this, just email one of us at BNN247 or look us up on Facebook, like I said, or YouTube, and what they call it, I am us, and then we can go from there. But to all of you who view us and listen to us, thank you so much. And we really do appreciate your attendance on this show. And we will be back. First of all, I want to say thank you to my co-host, Mr. Claude Foster. I'm going to go ahead and remove him and close us out. Take care, Mr. Claude. This is the Black News Network, once and forever again, signing off. And we want to thank you forever for being one of our listeners.